outer leaves. Inner outer leaves. There is such a thing. Okay, so what do we have right now? Let's double check. Right now we are officially at 11. So let's get rolling. Otherwise you guys are probably going to be like, this is going to take us 6 years to make this flower. So as you're doing it, shape as you go, like with your thumb, just gently massage the wire into place. I pull it down. I want it to be here. And I'm making that slight cup. I'm shaping it, holding it like with this to shape it. Picking just what I think works right there. And then it might look like there's gappage, but that's just because of the cupping going down. So just actually hold it up into place, and that actually looks good. So that's why I end up taking a little longer with these. And again, pushing down every time, push down your wire so that when you get to that other row, and now we're starting to get, at least for me, because I have a real hard time holding things because of the arthritis and stuff. So I push that wire down again so that you really want these to meet straight across. Pull that straight. Okay, get the wire around. Here we go. Now, pull this down. Still, I'm trying to guard against getting too cupped. Okay, we just want like the slightest hint of it. I don't even know if that's what it's called. You know, push your wire, work it. Work the wire, put it into place. Okay, well that looks like it doesn't want me to include that bead, so I'm not going to include it. Wrap around. Now, I have petals that are various degree of cuppage. That I'm pretty sure is not a word. But I'm pretty sure you also understand what I'm saying. And it works out okay, you know. That's okay. We want some natural variation with it, you know. The one thing that, at least for me when I'm making my flowers, that I always think of is like, you know, ultimately, these aren't natural. These aren't nature, right? And so there are a lot of times when petals are flat in nature. But the problem is, if it's flat for me, if it's flat in the beaded world, it just kind of looks flat. So I will kind of give it extra zhuzhing to give it personality. Now, see this one, I'm looking at that and I go, okay, that's borderline. But I feel like if I chop out another one, it'll be too short. It'll be too tight. But then now that I'm looking at it, see, I'm glad I did this teaching moment. I'm just not liking that because it's above, it's outside when it's flat. Now, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but I'm going to go back and cut a bead out. Now, when I do that, again, you got that kink now, so you got to go like this to get your kink out. Don't do that with smaller gauge wire. And I'm popping a bead off. And then I'm going to look and go, okay, I'm better with that. Okay, cool beans. And I'm going to pull that one down. And again, push this in. And shape as I go. Check on my so far so good. Pop some more beads up from my everlasting chain of beads. Come on down there. Okie dokie, Smokey. We can do it. Let's see what we got. Bring it around. Got this little thing flatten as I go. I want to kind of shape with it as I go. Now again, I'm looking here and I'm checking. It's going to get unwieldy, I'm telling you. I would not blame you if you start cursing me at this stage. Don't curse at me. But and don't curse me too bad these days, you know. Starting to feel a little superstitious these days. So it's going to start getting unwieldy. We are now officially at, can I add? 15 beads. There would be some irony in that if I could not. Okay, again, straighten it out. Use the beads as your straightener. Hit it square, holding it. Always holding this bottom to keep that nice roundness to it. But you also want to keep it shaped. So I'm pulling it around. I guess you're going to watch me do the whole darn thing. Dang nabbit. Oh my gosh, we're already at 36 minutes. Okay. Now, I'm looking at this one again. Test it. Pull the top wire to you. And that's far too loose, right? You can see that. So I'm going to pop a bead off. Check it again. That's good because I don't want it to be too cupped. So that's slightly underneath. Remember, we're looking for it to be slightly underneath the other one. You know, just like the edge of it, not the whole thing. Okay, then again, we wrap, pushing down all the time. Bring this one down. Let's bring it around. Push against here, push. So we're trying to keep that as closed off as possible. Okay, so always pushing and pulling with that wire. Now, at this point, things are starting to get unwieldy, at least for me. Maybe you guys some of you out there are a little less. Okay, so a little less clumsy. So again, I'm looking at that. So you're just checking every time. Flatten these with your fingers and just see. It's going to get ugly. But trust me, the lacing is going to be your bestest friend when it comes to these. But right now, so I'm just holding it flat like this just to see where it would lay if I did lace it. And that looks good. So again, bring it around. Bringing this around, straight around, pushing it up. Bring it in there. Okay. I lost count again. So now we are... I need to go around twice more. Can you do it with me? Can we make it? Can we make it? Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to bring it up. I might have to turn on the fan, though. I'm in the TV room, and the air conditioner doesn't really get back here as well. It's like on the furthest side of the house from here. And I'm having those, flashes that you get. So, me and the fan are best friends. Along with the lacing, apparently. Okay, so this one again, I'm questioning. I'm always questioning. This is why it takes me forever to do a darn petal. And I'm feeling borderline. I would actually be okay. It's probably fine if I leave it like that. But I want a slightly more cuppage to it. So I'm going to pop off a bead. And I'm going to own the fact that it might be too much cupping. And that's okay. We don't want it to be just super cupped. We don't want to be making, giant plums out of these things. Though, hey, that could be fun. But that's not what we're going for. Okay, this is going to be our last round. I'm beading like a snail, aren't I? I don't think I can do time lapse on this one. So keep your bottom thing straight. There we go. I was getting a little careless. Checking this again, and that looks good. I'm having a little better luck with that side. Okay, let me double check. I feel like I lost count. I always do not count correctly. So that's 4 plus 9. So that's going to be 19. Yes, I spent all day teaching calculus, and now I can't add. Don't tell anyone. Okay, so last wrap around. Didn't get too bad, and it might. We're going to do the inner ones, and, okay, again, I'm holding it here just to see that, like, if this were laced, where would this guy be? Again, this is what I'm talking about, like bossing the beads and the wire, like shape, like feel the beads, feel them. I chose a matte on this one just because that's what I did the other one. But there's pros and cons, to both. If you wanted to paint, though, matte is definitely, I think I wrote that in the instructions, definitely the way to go. Okay, sorry, I was thinking about something else, and then I realized I stopped paying attention. I was just feeling my beads. Okay, so that's about right. Now, another little hint, though, is that when you shape these, the outer row can get it a little bit loose. So if you want to underdo it and go tight just on the last one to the point where you're like, hey, maybe that was too tight, it's actually probably okay on the very last row. You might want to undercut it. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. And again, you can always, if you feel like it's going to be too tight too, you can pull this. This is another little thing I do. Again, you are literally the boss of the wire and the beads. If you needed to go somewhere, don't be don't be like beholden to what it's supposed to be. Like, I pull this over, like I'll pull this middle thing over a little bit and then kind of push it over, and that'll make it so that even though I went one bead down, it's not quite as tight. And that's also, if you can do that if your line here starts to get wonky or sideways, just bend this over and wrap the bead over like 0.5 millimeter. And that sounds so small, but it actually will make a difference. So now this one is tight, but it's not as tight as it would have been if I hit it straight, and you barely even notice that I did that weird little thing under here. You don't see a big zigzag on it. In fact, you barely see it at all. But just slightly loosens it. It's not as tight as it would have been. Because I wanted it to be tight, but I'm not sure I wanted it to be that tight. Now again, last one. And at this point, this thing looks like a messy mess. It's a little messy looking, and that's okay. So again, we're feeling the edge here. So right there is my natural end. I'm going to see that works. Okay. Now again, if you feel like you got too cupped, you can slow it down when you're through here and do like ones that are like almost flat and then start cupping slightly again. It's okay. It works. Trust me. Okay. And again, I'm an over wrapper. So I wrap the bottom down I don't know. Probably shouldn't tell you because you shouldn't do it 3/4 of an inch or so. I normally stop there. And on these, I'm going to chop this sucker off right there at the bottom clean little one. I like to, again, to make a big handle of this, so wrap it kind of big for me. Put that on my lap so I don't lose it. Okay, so we're gonna cut it off a little bit to the side so we don't have an even thing. Pull those straight. And then let's do our top. Now, before you do your top, if you want to, I pull this straight, pull this straight, and then just make sure you just push your top guys down in there tight, because we really want that rounded effect. So just push your rose in there. Just push them down a little bit. And then cut about 1/4 of an inch. Of course, I'm sure you know how to do all this stuff. I do like to bend mine over because I used to snag them all the time. And I was like, oh, I better bend them. So I bend them once, crimp it, and then bend again. Bend it down on there. And then I also do this thing. It depends on your wire. Be gentle. Don't like totally cram it. But I like to flatten my twisty part, because then it flattens better on the stem wire. Push that one down. And then I also just do a quick to make it like have a nice little, a sharp thing on the bottom. Okay, so now before we lace, what we're going to do is we're going to take this petal, and then at this point too, by the way, if you went a little bit sideways with which even here you can see slightly, just squish it over. Who cares? Push it over. It's okay. Now look it straight. Voila. Voila. Yeah, I somehow said a W there. It's getting a little European, I guess, on that one. So what we're going to do is here's what we're going to do with these. What we want is kind of a flat, sort of rounded, like one of those like rattan chairs that you used to have, that like wicker chairs that would have like the bottom and have like the big like kind of back to them. We want that look. We want to flatten it down. So you're going to take your thumb and push it down onto your bottom wrappy part. That probably has a name, but I don't know what it is. So we're going with bottom wrappy part. So stick your thumb on there. And this is also a good time, by the way, to mess with your rose a little bit. Again, bossing those beads around, telling them who's boss. You're the boss of all of it. I didn't want to go full catchphrase on this. I started feeling like Susan Powder. Remember her from the 90s? Stop the insanity. That was her catchphrase, which is kind of a cool catchphrase if you think about it. But that being said, it's really important, and thinking about the earlier flowers I made, that you do get to that zone so that you kind of can spread your own wings and also not be intimidated by patterns, as much, because patterns are awesome, but you want to use them. I'm really horrible at using them, I'll be honest, even my own. But, but if you do use them, you don't want to be intimidated by them. You want to enjoy them. You want to have fun within them, right? It's like a recipe. You want to like kind of put your own flair on it. If you want to add an extra clove of garlic, you add that extra clove of garlic. Heck with it, So anyhow, so we want to push this down. So we're going to push this down. I'm going to make a little like rattan chair. So like it's on the side. So that's what we're looking at on the side, right? You want that little base, so we're going to put our little, I was going to say put your little butts in there, but that's kind of a weird thing to say. But yet I said it. Okay, and it's also a good time to, what I was saying is straighten your rows. So feel them and push them to be even, because sometimes, depending on how you wrap, some will stick up and some will stick down. So get in there and just with your fingernail and just even them out. Why not? Or I could say it doesn't matter. But you know what? If you're doing this stuff, make it some stuff. Why not? If you can fix it, do it. So like get your rows nice and even. Just push them in, make them even. Don't let them tell you they don't want to be even. It's your prerogative. So get them all, use my fingernail on the edge and get them all kind of nice and even and set up. Okay. So now here's our raw flower. And to be honest, you might be able to just use this if you didn't want to lace it. That's tempting fate, but hey, more power to you. Okay. So as you've heard, probably me and my beading buddy Suzanne were big fans of this master wire supply stuff, because I'll be honest, well, you can probably guess from that, no surprises, I'm a tight lacer. I think it goes along with the overwrapping, and I bust through every lacing wire I've ever used, whether 30 gauge, 32, 34, I will bust straight through that eventually. Snaps like the day is long. But never, this is 34 gauge even, never once busted this. I have never busted this. It has actually, I think I've actually cut myself trying to pull it tight before. I don't know if I have. probably dry skin time at that time. Don't worry, you're not going to cut yourself. It's also cheap, which is nice. So win-win. So anyhow, and the cool thing about it is it's silver, and it is so thin, it basically disappears into the beads. So now I would not, I know some of you like to lace as you go, and I think that's a great idea in general. I never tried it yet, but I get the idea, and I think it sounds good. You know, old dogs, new tricks, etc., etc. Don't do that though with this one. I wouldn't recommend, because you need to shape it, and if you did that as you went, you wouldn't be able to make the little seat, right? Because it would all be kind of controlled. So we don't want to lace as we go. I'm doing it from the wrong side. So lace from the outside to the inside, and do it. We're gonna do the lacing after we make the little chair, but before we make the furrows. I'm not sure that made any sense, that sentence. Okay, and you can lace this pretty much halfway through. It's fine. These are going to be outer ones. You could, doesn't really matter where you put it, because we're not going to see it. And if we do, we're going to see it. So I do about 4 beads up on the middle one. Okay, so, oh my gosh, you're going to have to watch me lace. I think I should pause this. I feel so guilty watching someone laces. I mean, it's a hackneyed phrase, but I'm feeling like watching someone lace a flower or petal is probably like watching paint dry. Okay, but one thing I just want to say is just kind of keep it tight, keep it low here, hold it in here, pull it tight. You can pull this stuff really tight. Because it's so thin and kind of stiff, it actually can be a bit of a pain in the neck. I think some people lace with needles, which at this point I haven't tried either, but I don't blame people for doing that. I think that sounds like a great idea. New tricks, old dog, etc., etc. I think we've already been down that road. So pulling tight, but this thing you can get it really tight with this. I think I'm going to pause this because I definitely feel as if watching me do this is going to be painful. So, because I think y'all know how to lace, right? So in and out and in and out. Again, just, pull in here, pull it tight. We want to do it straight across as possible. If by the placement of the beads you start to go diagonal, at some point just make a conscious decision to jump it back a bead to whichever way it would be. Or you can keep going diagonal. It's not the end of the world. But if it gets too wonky, up to you. I try to keep it pretty straight on this one. Sometimes you do want that diagonal one. And then, each time I pull it through, I pull it through and then, pull it straight with my fingernail so that I can hit it straight again. As I say that, of course, I'm doing it wrong. Oh, it's because my reading glasses just fell off my nose. Okay, so I'm going to pause this for a half second because who the heck wants to watch this? Or we can ponder for a moment and we can meditatively do this together. Because then I go faster. If I stop, it might take me even longer. Well, for me, not for you guys, because it'd be paused. But what was I? I was thinking about these flowers too. They're so much fun to make, and I just love the fact that they're made out of little glass blobs. And I realized that I've always been in love with vintage botanical prints, and I've always had them around me. I've got them on me, on my skin. I've got them all over the place. And then for when I was in grad school for 6.5 years in Boston, I was in a museum. My office was in a museum. And there were glass flowers in that museum that were just so beautiful. And they used to be so famous. They're from like the late 1800s, well, mid to late. And they were made by a father and son who made glass eyes. And they had this special, I can't believe I'm forgetting this. God dang, I literally had to give this tour all the time to my students. I believe it was Czechoslovakia, somewhere Eastern Europe. And they had this special way that they do color. So they were commissioned by a mother and daughter, which is interesting because they were a father and son. This rich mother and daughter in Boston, Boston socialites, and to make glass flower models with their process. And they were so successful that they ended up staying there and making tons and then making invertebrate models for other museums. And these flowers were just so beautiful and so famous at the time that apparently you could get, I used to hear the story, off the plane in the at Logan at the airport and just tell a cab driver, take me to the glass flowers. And that's all you had to say. And they would know exactly where you meant, which museum, where, when, and how. And my office was like on the same floor, like right around, in the non-public area of the museum. And I swear they were just gorgeous. So if you ever look at the Museum of Comparative Zoology, I think that's, I can't remember what they call it, or the Museum of Natural History, and the public part. I think the part I was in was the Museum of Comparative Zoology, and that was the non-public part. Okay, I wrap around the last part twice. And anyway, you should drop in and see them. Apparently I haven't been back to Boston in years, but apparently they have a new exhibit, and they've restored a few. And I used to take my students there because we were supposed to, as kind of part of the class, how the museum was put together. And I would stop the students, we'd meet outside of the doors of the room, and I would tell them, I said, before we go into the room, yes, it's made of glass. Everything is made of glass except for the paper that the descriptions on, but everything in the model is glass. Everything in the model is glass. Everything in the model is glass. But inevitably, when we get in there, because it was just so amazing, someone would say, but is that glass? Because they made dirt out of glass. They literally made dirt out of glass. So I kind of understood the question. It was, and I'd say, yep, that's glass. And they would have a series of of fruits where they go from seed, and they'd go to then they'd move into the fruit, and then it would come off the vine, and then it'd be moldy. Everything was glass. They even had glass bees that were pollinating the flowers, and they'd do cross sections of it. So anyway, moral of the story is that I think that's where my love of the glass flowers really started. I already had the love of vintage botanical prints, but the glass flowers part was definitely augmented, at least, by being so close to those flowers. I love those flowers. And I actually love the fruit ones the best, the moldy fruit. I think it was a pear. Good Lord, I hope I get to go back there someday soon, health willing, and check out those flowers. But if any of you are ever in the Boston area, go see the flowers and hear me say, yes, it's made of glass. Because that would be my answer. If you say, is it made of glass? But, I mean, I understand why the students would ask if the dirt's made of glass, because that seems kind of far-fetched. But there it was. Anyhow, so then years later, I was doing some research in the London Museum of Natural History and British Museum of Natural History. And the Blotchkas, the father and son, had made a bunch of invertebrate models, and the guy who's the curator there took me to the back to see all of them. Oh my God, they were amazing, like jellyfish, just made out of glass, just that no one ever sees because they're in the back collections. Oh my gosh. Anyhow, gotta love our little glass blobs. It's our little way of being able to make things like that. So awesome, right? You get to have your own little piece of that. Okay, I talked my way right on through that lesson, didn't I? Okay, so back to business. Oh my gosh, did I really do that? Hopefully you could fast forward. I'm going to tell you guys on the notes. Please fast forward through lacing if you don't want to hear a long story about glass eyes and glass dirt. Okay, so when you get to the last edge, right? Now, again, if you ever have a wonky one where you're like, dang, I wish I had taken out an extra bead there. What you can do, which I don't really hear, but I'm just going to artificially show you. If this were kind of like that, pulled out, pull it down a little bit from the top and put the bagginess on the bottom where it's less likely to be seen, and you can just shape it out later. You don't want the top to stay well shaped. So there's always a way around something, right? And also, so just, you want to keep the top kind of tight. The bottom, if it gets a little baggy, so be it. I've never used the word baggy for that before in my life, but it kind of makes sense, right? Okay. I think I'm going to do a separate video for the smaller petals because this one needs to come to an end. Okay, let me see. What do we got? Okay, so I wrap it around twice to keep it really in there. Pull it nice and tight. Get close to your wire. Now, also be careful when you do this. It's very pointy wire. Anytime you're using the small gauge, just gently. I don't have a lot of calluses from wire and stuff. Just make sure you kind of rub it down a little bit so that, now, I don't think anyone's going to be up all in your flowers business, but you don't want anyone to get poked. I'm always worried because, like I said, my stuff sometimes, mostly goes out into the world, and I don't want anyone to become injured by one of my beaded flowers. That would be not cool. Okay, so now we've got this. Now we got our lacing, and so everything looks nice. Look at that. I mean, look at that. That's not because I'm a master beader or anything, and that's because lacing fixes where you mess up. It is your friend. And there are only 14 petals. Now, this has now been going on an hour. They shouldn't take an hour each, trust me. And if they do, they do. You practice. It's good. It's a good thing to kind of get used to. You might have done bigger, but I don't often do more than 21 rows of basic frame. I mean, maybe I do. I don't know. It feels like I don't. But anyhow, so again, let's go back to putting that bottom in here, getting that bottom bent again. So we're looking at this profile. Let me get this out of the way so you can see it. This kind of profile here. So we don't want full cuppage, just a little bit on the bottom. Pull this out, get that shaping in there. Okay, so now, and then kind of push this guy back. We almost want like a just a flat front here. And again, this is not the end of the world. Now, in general, it's a good idea if you're going to shape glass beads to use vinyl tipped pliers, because you're less likely to break them, obviously, right? The beads. So you can do that if you have them. You can get some off of, I don't know, I got a few, but I always come back to the $6 pair I got. It's $6. It gets the job done. I like them. I bought some at some point for some reason, even though I like these, but I wanted a second pair that was more expensive, and I don't like them nearly as much. They've got hydraulics and stuff in there. I'm like, what am I trying to put a lift on my Jeep? I just want to put a furl on the thing. So I just got these $6 ones, and they're fine. I've had them for 4 years. Now, here's the deal, though, with these. They're great because they don't crunch your beads unless you really, really try. Of course, they still can. But here's the problem with these I found when I was making them. So you're kind of making pie crust. Like you're doing that pie crust where you go, where you want to make the little, wavy edge. Wavy, that's the word I'm looking for. Another piece of irony, since I had to talk about graphing waves today, and now I can't even remember that word. Maybe that's why. Maybe I had a quota on the word wave. So here's the deal. You can do it, and you don't want them to be regular. You can push it, but I'll be honest, I wanted a little more drama. So I tempted fate, and I got out my handy-dandy, slightly serrated, just old Stanley that I had before I beaded for actual just needle nose pliers, so I could get a little sharper. Now, if you do that, really be careful they don't clamp. We just want to hold. Right? Because otherwise, I'm going to tell you, if you do break a bead here, that would officially not be cool. You don't want to do that. I mean, yeah, I always say you can fix anything, and you can. I guess if you broke a bead, you would pull this down and push one back up to make it tight, and then have the tightness be on the bottom and hide it. But let's try to avoid that, shall we? So hold, or use your vinyl tipped, and just get some little natural furl on there. Just do a little, do what you got to do. I get like a little bend to it, and then I kind of unbend when I do the next one, what I already bent, and then I go, why did I just unbend what I already bent? Because that seems weird. So just get a little furly bits on it. Try to do different ones each time slightly, and then bend it over again. Use what you've already crumpled, and then you're going to see I grabbed that. Well, then just smooth out your rows, put them down in there, make it a smooth bend. Push it back, do whatever you want to do, and mold it. This is what I was talking about, taking a basic frame and giving it a personality. It doesn't need to be flat. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't a place for the flat basic frames, and more power to them, but we're trying to make a peony, and peonies are fluffy. So you want to have a fluffy basic frame. So there's my petal. There it is. I took a basic frame, and I'm sure I'm not the first person ever to do this. I'm just bringing it up in this particular situation. And you can see it's slightly different than this one, and that's okay. You can pull it longer too if we need to later. You get to shape it. That's the thing that I didn't quite get when I first started. I really realized that today I don't know what one I was looking at that made me think about that. Where did this come from? Did I just dump this on this 30 gauge antique copper wire? So wires just dropping from the sky. So, I was using it to prop this up. Now I remember. Okay. So I was really like worried, you know, like, was it going to be the right shape? Was it the right number? Was it the right this, the right that? But I realized actually, once you get the bead on the wire, like I said, not only are you the boss of the wire, you're the boss of the beads too. So make them, sculpt them, like sculpt it, like make it a living thing, right? Ultimately, we want these to look like living things. They're because we love flowers, right? We don't make these, you know, because, well, maybe you do, because I do make them because I love beads too, but I don't make them just because I like metal wire or something, you know. It's the whole thing, making this flower. So sculpt it, move it, you know, get it moving, put it in your hands and make it the shape you want it to be, you know? So anyhow, so this was the original one I had, and now I have this guy. And so I am going to stop this one before I do the inner ones, and the next one will be shorter, because I think you've done your time now. Holy cannoli. Okay, so let's hope this works. So actually, I am going to stop it, because I think this app restarted the time, and I'm worried that it's going to make it into 2 videos. Okay, so this is going to be all our flowers. We'll talk, and they're going to go together like that. It's all going to be lovely. So next time we'll do our little ones, and there's only 6 of those. So you want to do 8. I don't know if I said that. I think I did. You want to do 8 of the ones we just did. And they don't have to all look the same. We don't want them to look all the same. You know, we want them to already, you know, we want them to make a peony, right? We want it to look like that's going to be cool. I just like looking at it. Sometimes I just hold them like, that's cool. Right? So that's the end of video 1. A little extra ramble on it. Next time we'll order it, the video less ramble. And let me see how I stop this thing. So I'll see you next time for inner petals.